Hi, I'm Dave Vickers and welcome to the Photo Show. In today's episode, we're taking a look at the new offering from Nikon, the Z5. Now, one of the trends from 2020 seems to be that camera manufacturers are surprising us with releasing new cameras without much of a fanfare beforehand. But with everything else that's gone on in 2020, that's probably not the most surprising thing that's happened this year. But anyway, Nikon have also followed this trend and they've now released their new entry-level full-frame mirrorless camera, the Z5. Now, back in 2019, Nikon released the first of their Z mirrorless cameras, the Z6 and the Z7. And early in 2020, they released the crop sensor version of these cameras, the Z50. And now Nikon have released what they're calling their entry-level full-frame mirrorless camera, the Z5. So let's take a look at some of the specs of the Z5. Now, as we've already said, the Z5 is Nikon's entry-level full-frame mirrorless camera. So it's a full-frame mirrorless camera, and on the Z5 it has a 24.3 megapixel sensor, which is not that different from the Z6, which has a 24.5 megapixel sensor. So 0.2 of a megapixel there difference between the Z5 and the Z6. Body-wise, the cameras are exactly the same. The Z5, the Z6 and the Z7 all share exactly the same magnesium alloy body. The only difference with the Z5 is it now doesn't have the mode screen on the top, and the mode dial has now moved across from the left-hand side to where the mode screen is on the Z6 and the Z7. Apart from that, the buttons, the functions, the menu systems are all exactly the same as on the Z6 and the Z7. The Z5 has a maximum shutter speed of 1/8,000th of a second, and considering this is the entry-level version of this camera, that's impressive. A lot of entry-level versions will have 1/4000th of a second, but the Z5 will have a maximum shutter speed of 1/8,000th of a second. ISO range on the Z5 is exactly the same as the Z6, ISO 100 to ISO 51200. The Z5 also has built-in image stabilization, and it's the same system that's used on the Z6 and the Z7, so it's a 5-axis built-in image stabilization. Autofocus on the Z5. It has 273 autofocus points and also features face and eye detection, exactly the same as on the Z6 and the Z7. As I was saying earlier, the Z5 will shoot at 1/8,000th of a second, which is great for an entry-level camera. The one difference between this and the other cameras is that the Z5 will only shoot at 4.5 frames per second, whereas the Z6 will shoot at 12 frames per second, so there is a difference between the two cameras there. The Z5 has a 2.3 million dot electronic viewfinder, and on the rear is a 3.2 inch tilting touchscreen, which is exactly the same as it is on the Z6 and the Z7. Video-wise, the Z5 will shoot 4K video at up to 30 frames per second, but there is a crop factor involved. There's a 1.7x crop factor involved when shooting 4K on the Z5, and the Z5 will also shoot at 1080p at up to 60 frames per second, with the Z6 will do 1080p at 120 frames per second. The Z5 will also have a new Nikon battery, which offers more shots per charge, but this battery is backwards compatible, and you could put that into the Z6 and get more shots per charge as well. Now, one of the main differences between the Z5 and the Z6 is the Z5 actually has dual card slots. It has slots for 2 SD cards, whereas the Z6 just had a single XQD card slot. And finally for the Z5 is the price. In the UK, it's going to be about £1,500, which is about $1,400 in the US for the body only. If you compare that to the Z6 body only is £1,650, which is around $1,800 US. So there's not a massive price difference between these two cameras. And this is kind of where my main question is. Why would you buy a Z5 when the price difference isn't that much between it and the Z6? And there are advantages and disadvantages to both cameras. The Z6 has a much better frame rate with 12 frames per second, up against the Z5's 4.5 frames per second. But the Z5 has dual card slots, up against the Z6's single card slot. So it's kind of a case of Nikon giveth and Nikon taketh away here. I'm kind of unsure where this camera sits. The Z5 is Nikon's entry-level full-frame camera, but it's not that big a step up to the Z6. So that concludes our look at Nikon's new offering, the full-frame mirrorless Z5. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think the Z5 is worth it, or do you think it's worth spending an extra couple of £100 to get the Z6, where you're getting a better frame rate and slightly better video quality, but sacrificing just a single card slot? Do you think you would go for the brand new Z5 or step up a little to the Z6? Let me know in the comments below. I'd be really interested to hear what you think about these two cameras. For now, I'm Dave Vickers. This is the Photo Show. Please stay safe and well, and we'll see you in the next episode.